Well, welcome back. This will be the second video in a series of four introducing the topic of world religions. Last video, we talked about reasons for studying world religion. Then we also talked about the word itself, religion, its etymological background. And then we talked about the dimensions of world religions and its phenomena, the phenomena of religion, that it's everywhere. The vast majority of the world is religious. And we talked about the various fields of study that study world religion. And then we also talked about the elements of religion, what things make up the phenomenon of religion, and religion can be something that deals something very relational with a transcendent being, or a non-relational type of religion, which we'll see in our studies that there are both types. So that was kind of what we covered in the first video. We're moving now into the section on the definition of religion, and we'll move into that uh, now. And so I'm going to share the screen with you, and we will get started on that. Let me share it. We'll get going. All right. Let me pull up to where we left off. Slideshow 20. There we go. 21. All right. Well, let's just talk about the various definitions of religion that people have had throughout the decades. It's not easily defined. It really depends on location, experience, or commitment. It could something to do with the transcendent. Definition could deal with human nature, human society, and we're going to see this in a lot of these definitions that come along. Here's one from Max Mueller and his introduction to the science of religion. Religion is a mental faculty or disposition which, independent of, nay, in spite of, sense and reason, enables man to apprehend the infinite under different names and under varying guises. Now, what you might want to note on here is, in spite of sense and reason, it's more of an experience in his perspective. It's some kind of experiential thing that happens to people. And we're going to see that we're going to land on one definition that's going to be quite different from that. But notice this is more of a something that happens within your mind, you experience, or a feeling. And you see more people that hold this position. Another one here, some other. Uh, Religion is the recognition of all duties as divine command. So, all duties. Well, that's a lot of different things, and that various means. Religion can be pretty much anything that we consider, you know, duties that are somehow divinely commanded to us. Or you have the essence of religion is the feeling of absolute dependence, Schleiermacher. That's a mouthful of a German name, but the he's a very well-known theologian. But again, notice his revolves around feelings. If you were just to look it up, like in a dictionary, like Erdman's Handbook on World Religions, say a belief in spiritual beings. That's very simple definition of religion. However, we're going to expand on that. That is partially true, but there's more to it than that. William James, he says, consists of the belief that there is an unseen order and that our supreme good lies in harmoniously adjusting ourselves thereto. And so it's an unseen order, but it doesn't really define what that is. But somehow our supreme good we is there, so we should adjust ourselves to it. That's pretty nebulous. Religion is the feeling, acts, and experience of individual men in their solitude, so far as they apprehend themselves to stand in relation to whatever they may consider the divine. Whatever they may consider the divine, he's saying here. And then notice his feelings and acts and experience, very experiential type of things in his thinking on what constitutes religion. Well, if you want some definitions that are more on the negative side, take Karl Marx. It's the opiate of the people. That's his description of religion. And so he was very negative towards religion and felt like it enslaved people away from, the, you know, proletariat getting, free from the chains of the bourgeoisie. So, but Thomas Edison, he just said religion's all bunk. So he didn't think there was anything useful about religion. Sigmund Freud, he says an illusion deriving its strength from the fact that it falls in with our instinctual desires. And we'll look at some other things about that Freud said, but it's an illusion. It's somewhere in our instinctual desires, our subconscious stuff, and we'll see this more. And there's some more specifics he'll talk about. All right, another one, a famous theologian, Paul Tillich, defined religion as that which is of ultimate concern. Well, I got to admit, Paul Tillich is hard to read for anyone. Much his students alone didn't always agree on what he actually said. But with this definition, anything that's most concerned to a person can be classed as religion. If you're most concerned about taking vacations all the time, then that's your religion. I think in one of your videos where they're asking what's religion, one of them says, well, he thinks going out and drinking is good, is part of being religious. Patriotism can be ultimate concern. Nationalism, family, you could just keep on naming them. Here's a decent definition, though we won't be using this one. Religion is a pattern of beliefs and practices that express and enact what a community regards as sacred or of ultimate about life. And decent definition, but we're going to look at a different one. You might note other systems that do not view themselves as religions do not usually speak about the sacred or the ultimate. This is true about ideologies, political ideologies. So ultimate or sacred does not necessarily entail something transcendent. Now, we tend to think in terms of something ultimate or sacred as being transcendent, but that's not necessarily true. Something ultimate can be, okay, I believe in a certain political system, that's my ultimate, and it's sacred. I mean, I set it aside as in a special position. And so notice that's not the same as being transcendent, and we'll come back to that. One of the reasons I don't accept this is because it does not have the transcendent aspect in the definition of religion. Our definition. We're going to use the definition comes in the book that you're using for this course. I really prefer his definition. If you're using the second edition of his book, he's revised that definition slightly bit, but it really doesn't change the definition itself for the most part. He says a religion is a system of beliefs and practices that provides values to give life meaning and coherence by directing the person toward the transcendence. In the second edition, he will add the idea of cultus into it, and but pretty much that does help the definition. But I think he took out provides values in the process. I would maintain provides values and add cultus, which we'll see here in a moment. So here's his other definition, second edition. A religious system of beliefs and practices that by means of its cultus directs a person toward transcendence and thus provides meaning and coherence to a person's life. Now, cultus just means rituals, rites, rituals, or usages of worship. So these would be things like praying, Lord's Supper, things like that that go on and are continuing practices within a belief system. Now, he uses the word transcendence, which to me is one of the most important parts of the definition and differentiates religion from other worldviews. So, transcendence limits the definition to a focus on something beyond just something ultimate or sacred. And so that's where that difference comes in. He says coherence to a person's life, and that may be true, but it could also be to a community of followers as well. And usually, a religion is made up of a community of followers. One question we have to ask: can belief held by only one person be considered a religion? Well, we have what's called private religion when there's no community of believers. A person may actually have rituals. A lot of people who are spiritual, they don't actually have rituals, but they do have some kind of spiritual beliefs. But you could have some kind of private religion where you go through your own personal rituals and things as well. And so notice there's a lot of variety in the idea of religion, but this is our definition for the course. So this is the definition you want to, focus on. And I'll be referring to, this definition throughout the course. But that is partly because we need to realize that when we talk about the transcendent, something above humanity, above our physical world, we're talking about a spiritual dimension. This distinguishes religion from other worldviews, and we'll get more into that as we go along. All right, so which of these is a religion depends on your definition. So taking our definition, we can look at these and see if, hey, does that qualify as a religion? Well, seeking oneness with the universe. Well, what's the transcendent in there? The universe is a physical thing, so that's not transcendent. Seeking oneness, whatever that oneness is, it's your position with the universe. Yeah, it probably doesn't, but at the same time, there are religions that seek this to a degree. And so we have to kind of say, well, how does this fit as a religion? Service to humanity. This comes along and say, well, couldn't that be my ultimate concern? And it's a good concern. And we certainly, those of us as Christians, would agree this is something that has to be practiced. But is that what constitutes religion? Worship of a spiritual being or beings? That certainly is part of it, and that is transcendent as well. So definitely would be a part of the definition of religion, but also notice the definition we had. There is rituals and, ways directing us, our lives and ways to live are also included. Communism. Sometimes people have said that communism is a religion. Well, people, devoted to it as something that's ultimate in political thinking and in their lives. But again, it's a total secular system with no spiritual dimension. Therefore, you don't have this aspect of the transcendent in it. Fixated on Elvis. I know it's kind of weird, but I had a teacher in my PhD program that was some research Elvis impersonators, and the amazing amount of people fixated on Elvis and lifting him up as some incredible being and so forth. I liked Elvis and his music, but I don't think that elevates to the point of a religion. Secularism. Now we might think, well, secularism that only believes that the physical world that you can observe with the five senses is all that exists. Well, by our definition, of course, it's excluded from being a religion simply because there is no transcendent, not something above the physical nature of things. But in Supreme Court ruling of Turcaso v. Watkins, 1961, Supreme Court ruled that secular humanism can be recognized as a religion. And among other things, they said among religions in the country which do not teach what would generally be considered a belief in the existence of God are Buddhism, Taoism, ethical culture, secular humanism, and others. And so they ruled basically that secular humanism could be a religion, referred to as a religion, and as far as how they work in society, they could come under the religion category. Now, by our definition, as I said, that wouldn't be the case. There is a lot of debate going on. Some secular humanists would prefer not to be called a religion. And I've heard other people who are religious saying, that, we should class secular humanism as a religion. I would say no, it shouldn't be classed, and based on what the definition we accepted in this class, it would not be a religion. Now, it is a worldview, just like Christianity is a worldview, Buddhism is a worldview, Taoism is a worldview. So we just need to keep in mind that you can have, there could be a worldview, but not necessarily religion by our definition. But if you accept some other definitions, yeah, it could be broad enough to include that. But then that basically means you can pretty much include anything. So you got to keep in mind some of the ways you were defining things here as it relates to religion. There's a difference between being religious and being spiritual. Religion basically means it's your spirituality being seen through ritual or cultus, as Cordovan, your writer of your textbook, says. He notes here that religion also involves some external features, no matter how small, which have meaning only for the sake of the religious belief and would be unnecessary in any other context. We are going to call this factor the cultus of religion. And I think that's a good statement. Spiritual, on the other hand, it's belief and practice without ritual is an easy way to define that. You'll find people, you say, you believe in God. Yes. Do you, but what's your religion? I don't really have a religion, they'll say. But I do believe, in spiritual things. And then you might, as you explore further, you find out what those spiritual things are. And so you have to keep in mind that some people who would not claim a particular religion or to be religious, they can be spiritual. And so you kind of have to explore what they personally mean by that, because there's no one way that any of the people define what it means to be spiritual. It's just what it means to them to be spiritual. All right, well, to help us identify religion, there's been 6 factors pointed out that help us to identify whether something is a religion. I think these are good factors, and overall they do the job of pointing us to this can be called a religion. So number 1 usually focuses on people's relationship to the unseen realms of God, God's spirits, ancestors, demons, or you could say the transcendent. There are other religions like the Eastern religions of Hinduism and Buddhism that they may not have a personal deity or gods or even ancestors involved or demons, but they're pointing to a relationship with some cycle or something that's happening that a person goes through to reach a certain level in their relationship to something unseen. So there is a system of myths, prophecies, rituals illuminating the spiritual realm for communing with or propitiating, or in other words, appeasing the spiritual beings. You can see this in Christianity and Judaism, even Hinduism. You have the Bible in Christianity. You have uh, the Torah and the prophets in Judaism. So you have these different type of systems of myths. By myths doesn't necessarily mean they're untrue, but it's the writings. In other words, there are organized rituals, places of worship, holy people, and writings in their history. And so, in this case, there are certain practices that go on that identify it as a religion. There is a view to something beyond current physical existence on which to focus. So, this means there's something beyond just physical existence that's important in their religion. And this gets you into some of the religions that don't believe in a personal God, but they do believe something beyond this physical existence to some degree or another. Sometimes it's not much, but there's something there. There is a code or of conduct or moral order, and you see this across all the religions. There has been a large group of believers sometime, and so these six factors in identifying religion help us to say, yeah, this would really classify as a religion. And so keep these factors in mind. I'm sure I'll be asking you about them on exams and just in discussion type of things. All right, let's see. When your writer, Winfried Corduan, he notes three approaches to religion. And we're going to finish this lecture by looking at the subjective or psychological approach. And then we'll wait to cover the others in another lecture. But there are these, I do think he's doing a good job of breaking these down. There's a subjective or psychological approach, the evolutionary approach, and monotheism. Sorry, I can't even say the word here. As a source of religion. So these are, you call them three approaches, three theories. To understand them, when we talk about subjective psychological approach and the evolutionary approach, many times people mix those two. And so when you see someone taking a psychological approach, oftentimes they also come from an evolutionary approach in the background and of that what they're saying. And so he's breaking them down into two parts, which is helpful, but just realize that they're often just conflated together, so that when they're talking about one, they're talking about the other also being involved. All right, concept, subjective theory. Basically, religion is based on subjective, subconscious feelings that are given physical expression. So that's just definition of the subjective theory. So if I ask you on an exam, tell me what the subjective theory is of religion. It's based on subjective, subconscious feelings that are given physical expression. There will be different things that fall into this category. What subjective, subconscious feelings are there that are given this physical expression? And they'll say, well, it's to develop to fulfill the needs of men or people. saying, we have some subconscious needs, and that's expressed in religion. Religion as a part of humanity, source not important. They're saying it just comes out of human beings, generally from the subconscious area. But other than that, the source isn't important. And they certainly wouldn't believe that, that there is an ultimate God who is the source of religion. Specific beliefs and practice are expressions of subconscious symbols and attitudes. So you'll find, you have all these subconscious symbols and attitudes or dreams, some will add in, you know, and really taking those from your subconscious and you project out to invent the religion. Divine revelation is the product of people's expression of their psychic. So if you say, well, that's divine revelation, or if you believe in the Bible, they say, well, that's just, you know, product of people's expression of their psychic, not God giving us His will. Rituals allow for an outlet of subconscious religious drive. So we invent these rituals that come from our subconscious needs, whatever they may be, and we'll see some things that talk about this as we go along here. So that's the subjective theory or psychological theory of religion. Well, just to give you some people who have contributed to this way of thinking, we'll just note some of them. Friedrich Schleiermacher, who we talked about earlier, he talks about it begins with a feeling of dependence that's coming from within ourselves, not outside from God. It's really not a set of beliefs. So it's a more of a dependence on an absolute, which he says would be God. So it proceeds from a feeling of dependence to the idea there is an object of dependence, not the idea there is a God, and therefore we should look to him as someone who we should devote our lives to. Ludwig Feuerbach, concept of God is a being with idealized human traits taken to their ultimate characteristics. So this is coming from humans saying, well, I just idealize a perfect human and take the traits of humans, the best ones, and, take it to this highest dimension. And that becomes God, our idea of God. So worshiping God is worshiping the ideal self-image, in other words. And you can see this in his book, Essence of Christianity. Well, Sigmund Freud, always a fun one. He talks about it being a psychological need for a father figure. So if we talk about God, it comes from our subconscious need for a better father figure. We may have not had a good one, or maybe we have a good one, but we idealize a father figure to above what a normal father would be, and that's God. Excuse me. So people substitute idealized images for an imperfect father figure. Religious nature is a symptom, he would say, of psychological immaturity. And I think this has come about even more so today in the 21st century, where people look to science and say, well, science will have all the answers. And, so if you don't depend on science and have to depend on God or, spiritual dimension, well, you're just immature, you're not smart. And it's just psychological immaturity. So we see that being put forward by atheists today. Rudolf Otto published the idea of the holy. A person is overwhelmed with a feeling of God's greatness and majesty and one's own limitations, a feeling of fear and awe. So he puts religion down into the area of just feelings. Reason's not a part of it. And so this means it's more a psychological event, where we, for Christians, reason is a part of it. When God created us in his image, he made us reasoning beings. It's not only something we experience, but it's also something that can be thought about and reasoned and, It's that aspect of being human is part of what makes us humans in the image of God. He would say psychological experience from a subconscious, non-rational faculties. And so keep in mind in this theory, in the subjective theory, everything comes back to feelings, subjective, subconscious things going on that we might not can put our fingers on exactly, but they're what's creating religion. It's not coming from an outside source like God making it known, so as we would say in Christianity. All right. C.G. Jung, human dreams are from subconscious are expressed in religion. So here you got dreams being thrown in. Mircea Eliade from the University of Chicago, subconscious symbols manifest themselves in the manifestation of the holy. So again, subconscious symbols raise themselves up to some kind of manifestation of the holy. So again, it's all subconscious things. Now, some critiques of the psychological subjective approach to religion. First, note that God is just a manifestation of the human condition. In other words, we're kind of inventing God. He doesn't exist in and of himself. We're just inventing this religious idea of God and other things in the religion from our human condition, whatever that may be, whether it's need for a father figure or it's from some dreams or symbols or so forth. Even if this subjective aspect exists, it doesn't rule out that God is a reality apart from humanity. I frankly think that, when God created us in His image, He created in us a longing and a need to look beyond ourselves to something that is transcendent. And you may call this some kind of subconscious thing, and it may very well be, but it really doesn't rule out this idea that God exists in and of himself. So God, the Bible speaks of people created in the image of God, but God is self-existing, separate from humanity, is our belief in Christianity. And you'll see other beliefs that uh, going the same direction, but there are others that the whole concept of God is totally different. So, yeah, I think God may have given humanity a sense of dependence, feelings of the other, or even the idea of the holy. But that doesn't mean that he came into existence just because we invented him from our subconscious thinking. This subjective approach starts from self-experience, not revelation. For Christians, anyway, the idea is God has revealed himself to humanity in various ways from beginning the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament, ultimately in Christ as he was God who came in the flesh. It doesn't start with self-experience. It comes from God's initiating everything and revealing himself. And then we take that and, we may have some things built into us as beings created in the image of God, but God is the one who began it all. So the question is, did a sense of God begin with humans or with God? And what we're going to say in this class, as far as from a Christian perspective, it begins with God. But as we look at different religions, we can see, their approach to this. The major monotheistic religions would really, at least traditionally, say it begins with God, not with humans. So this is through the psychological subjective approach to religion. Next time we'll move on and talk about the evolutionary approach and then the monotheistic approach uh, to the origins of religion. So we'll cut it off for this time, and I hope to see you again on the next video. So I hope you have a good day and take care. Bye-bye.